This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening. What an end of the week it has been for the SMU community as SMU Athletic Director Rick Hart announced he is stepping down from the position at the end of the academic year, or when a hire is made, depending on which press release you read from SMU. But his run that started in July 2012 is ending very soon. And this has major implications for the university. And we'll talk about a lot of that on this podcast. But before we do, I do want to tell you guys, now is the time to jump on theponyexpress.com. We talk about it a lot, the reasons, but an athletic director search is another reason to, as this podcast is up, have an early list of names to know around the country for this position. And you can get all of that, as well as the beginning of spring practice coverage for 2 months for just $1 when you use the code SMU1. That's SMU, the number 1. The news of Rick Hart's departure from the university nationally really comes as a surprise, but with new president Jay Hartzell set to begin his tenure this summer, it does make a little bit more sense as you kind of dig into it as far as new leadership coming into the athletic department. Now, Rick Hart has had a really strong tenure at SMU. I mean, he is on paper the most successful SMU athletic director, bringing SMU to the ACC, raising money, setting records, seeing the success of the football program, having some of the non-revenue sports have some success, the facility improvements, and some of the general things that SMU needed to be able to be ready for this move to the ACC. He helped shepherd that in the right direction. I mean, there's a lot of good that Rick Hart did as SMU's athletic director. And at the same time, there are some areas where SMU hasn't been up to the standard of a lot of the leadership at the university, in particular, some of the board of trustees. I don't think that's a secret. I think most SMU people that listen to this podcast will know exactly kind of what some of the things I'm talking about. We've seen some of the areas that needed vast improvement. Game day experience, which we've seen that as SMU opened up the Gary Weber end zone complex, had sellout crowds this year, all without any major issues of fan experience, which we saw in the past, notably that TCU game. There was walking Sonny Dykes down the boulevard. There was the Moody reseat, which I still think is the right decision, just kind of how it all played out. Did not end up benefiting the atmosphere. The student seating in sections, both in basketball and trying to find new ways to get students to the football games at various times. There are things that Rick Hart just didn't fit with the new vision of this new era with Jay Hartzell coming in. And so he steps down. And I still want to just say, very successful run as SMU's athletic director. And there are always things that you can improve on. And whoever SMU brings in, they're going to face some of those same questions. They're going to have people that are not in their corner. They're going to have people that are questioning, why is he in this position? He or she in this position? Why is he or she doing this? I mean, all of those things come with being an athletic director. They come with this era that we're in college athletics, where everything costs more money. The future is unclear. And everybody wants to be almost, especially at a school like SMU where it's smaller, treated at a certain level versus some of the, bigger money and bigger influential people at the university are. And so I think you're in truly an era of college athletics where a lot of the athletic directors, save for a handful, are really very much open to criticism in terms of people thinking there should be improvements, not agreeing with the way things are done, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think Rick Hart navigated it very well, for all of the changes that were thrown SMU's way, for all of the different moments in his tenure, I mean, he did the best he could, and he is a strong administrator. I think it's a relatively organized athletic department in a way, and I know some people will probably jump right down my throat on that, but as far as procedures and some of the things that they try to do at a high level and a respectful level of the industry, I think he put SMU in a strong, stable position after the prior athletic department administration, was a little bit more brazen, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more loud with how they tried to do things. Truthfully, I mean, there are different ways to skin a cat, and we've seen some of those ways work and some of those ways not work. I don't think it's any secret that SMU going after its ACC and Pac-12 membership was largely David Miller, the chairman of the board, and many initial board of trustees members that were involved in it. And President Turner was involved, and Rick Hart was kind of involved too. But David Miller flipped NC State. That's not a secret. That's out there. That's how it got across the finish line. And I think Rick has done a really good job of presenting SMU as a respectful, grateful, and willing partner for whatever conference SMU's been in, whether it was CUSA, ACC, Big East for a cup of coffee, and the American, if I forgot that. And there's a certain way that SMU carried itself. And I think most schools and most conference and the conferences SMU is affiliated with really appreciate that. And even when SMU was maybe toying around with the Big 12 trying to get in there, you talk to some people that aren't a Baylor, a Houston, a Texas Tech, a TCU, there's a lot of respect for what SMU is and has been built into over this long run that it has taken SMU to get to this position. So I don't want, at least in my opinion, I wouldn't want Rick's tenure to be overshadowed by some of the, I think, key mistakes that he made in terms of the way he operated and the way he ran the athletic department, to overshadow what you still needed, which was a very organized athletic department for and stable for what all SMU had going on, when you do have some bigger names at the university pulling the strings to make things happen, like ACC, fundraising for some of these major facility gifts, the Gary Weber End Zone Complex, tennis, swimming, diving, anything else that I'm probably Washburn Stadium. There's a lot of pieces that have been pulled in the right direction by the athletic department. But, and I think this is why it makes a lot of sense now for this to come down. Like when the news broke last night, Shan Sharif, I think I'm saying that right, from 105.3 The Fan, actually said that he was hearing that Rick Hart would be out on Friday. And part of me, when I was trying to make calls, which a lot of tight-lipped people last night, but part of me said, okay, this doesn't make sense. Jay Hartzell isn't officially a part of the, university on the job. Do you go about this like now? Is this really the time? Or is it make more sense for Jay Hartzell to be, on campus June 1 and for then things to kind of come down? Because I did feel like, and I've said this over the last probably year, that I felt like long term, eventually there would be a change. I mean, that's no secret. Like Rick Hart, even if, he can't live forever or whatever, but like there was always that little buzz of, well, eventually SMU is going to make a change at athletic director. And what would that look like? Don't know. And didn't really know until this morning. I got some confirmations and things like that this was coming down. And that's why you want to be careful of this in terms of my shoes. And, I put a piece up on theponyexpress.com last night where we broke down why, Rick was successful, why there were some areas that, he fell short that honestly probably soured him with some pretty key people. You look at the basketball program as a whole and kind of how it was handled and the ambition for that program when they went out and even hired Rob Lanier. I mean, I think that was a major misstep. And I don't think from that moment, I really don't think he kind of recovered his footing long term with SMU. And that, kind of always kind of hung in the back of my mind when people would ask or, complain or whatever. I mean, there is that piece, right? Like that is, pretty, I feel pretty strongly about that when I say that. But the question was when, or would it really happen? And credit to, Rick Hart being able to step down. I think that's a hard thing to do. And he nationally is getting a lot of credit, and he's nationally getting a lot of respect. And I think he should, because it's not an easy school to do the job of an athletic director when you also have a president who at the time, Argel Turner, who really made a lot of the decisions for the university, or maybe squashed some things too. And now you have a new president who comes from the SEC, who comes from shooting high and getting Texas into the SEC, and he wants his own people. And that's a part of this business. And that's a part of when you make a university presidential change, you can almost bet your bottom dollar, unless you have a top 3 type of AD nationally where nobody complains about him, or there are very, very few complaints. You are looking at somebody who I think has a want to make a change at the athletic department, and that's what has happened at SMU. So that is kind of how we got here in some bits and pieces, and we've got the early names to know going up on the site. We've also got kind of the what SMU is looking for and the key things that SMU wants in a new athletic director up on the site. So please head over there and check it out. But do you want to say that this show is presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency? Mark Villasana, give him a call, 214-352-5656. He's an SMU alum. He was on the trip to Virginia Tech where SMU pulled out the win there against the Hokies. Big supporter of SMU athletics, and he wants to help you find the best insurance for you and the best coverage possible. So reach out to him today, 214-352-5656, or email him, markv@nwagencies.com. So appreciate Mark and all he does for On the Pony Express. Look, when you look at this position and talking with several people around the industry early on, this is the top available athletic director job that's open. Rutgers is also open right now, and I know that's Big Ten, but the money that's going to be behind this move, the money that is flowing into this university, the buzz that this university has with Jay Hartzell, the athletics programs moving in that right direction, things are heating up for SMU very quickly. And I will say, I do think there's going to be more of a search. I don't think it's going to be one that you see a new hire made very quickly. I just don't see that based on my conversations. There are a lot of people that are interested in this job as well. And I think that can also change the trajectory of this hire in a sense. SMU is going to shoot for somebody who is a sitting power conference AD. That's the world we sit in right now. That is where you need the experience if you're SMU, because look, the leadership of this university wants someone who has been in the room with those Power 4 conferences. They want somebody who's been in the room with television networks talking about these type of ways to improve the overall situation that their school is in. They want that. And they also know that they were able to go out and make a splash with Jay Hartzell. They know that they can go get someone that can make a similar splash when it comes to this position. And I think that's the wild card. And I was talking with somebody before I jumped on here to record. That's the wild card for this position, because when you look at it at face value, you say, okay, think about Big 10 and SEC, and you could probably cross off everybody on the list. I mean, just being truthful with you guys, that is kind of where they're at monetarily. That's where they're at television contract wise. They're making the decisions across the country right now for the direction of intercollegiate athletics. That's where they're sitting at the table. But at the same time, there are going to be Big Ten, SEC athletic directors that are on the list for SMU, that are big names, that do have experience, that might be open to a change, and that might be open to walking into a pretty healthy salary compensation package as well. I mean, you can say what you want to. You just want to money whip somebody to come to SMU. That's not going to work. That's not going to do well. That's not somebody that wants to be here. I mean, these athletic directors, I mean, they're very similar to coaches in a sense. Yes, they do generally get longer term to put their plan in place and to get a general judgment of what the athletic department health looks like. So they do get more runway. They get that chance to make multiple coaching hires. They get that chance to put their fundraising plans in place and hire their own people and bring in the people to make the university successful in athletics. They get longer runway. So there are some people that you might sit there and say, wow, that person has been there for 10 years or whatever, and it might not be a person that you might necessarily think is open. But with this job and the direction of the university, it is generally coveted. I'm not sitting here and saying that SMU is going to go hire Greg Byrne from Alabama. I'm not sitting here saying that. I personally don't even think Chris Del Conte is going to take the job if he is offered it. Texas's athletic director. A lot of people want to jump right at that one and say, "Oh my gosh, yeah, Jay Hartzell just came from Texas, had a great relationship with Chris Del Conte. He worked at TCU, so he knows all these things that add up." But I just don't see it happening. But what I could see happening is somebody getting into a different situation after being somewhere for maybe a minute and saying, all right, I want to make a change. This is a great university. This has a great new president. This has a lot of buzz. Applications are up. The school facilities are doing well. NIL has been healthy. But okay, let me take it to the next level. And let me take it to the next level with people that have the monetary support and passion for this university to go to the next level. And then, oh, by the way, let me help them make sure that they're always on the right side of what is going to come or what could come with future restructuring of whether it be conferences or just the general NCAA model, if there is at one point a breakaway from the NCAA and or a restructuring where, let's just say, arbitrary number top 70 are in. Well, who are those 70 or who are those 60? SMU wants to make sure this is still a very pivotal moment in the world of college athletics, but in particular for SMU to make sure that they capitalize on it. That's why it was so important for SMU to have a good impression in football this year. That's why it was so important for SMU to go out and make a change and hire Andy Enfield. That's why SMU went out and said, you know what, President Turner, thank you so much. It's time for a new blood. I mean, you can talk about stepping down and things like that, but that's why there was that change. It's time to go to the next level. There are things happening at this university that continue to give it more accolades and reasons for people to be excited about what is going on. And whether you're a fan of another school listening to this podcast or not, that's kind of the reality. When you get into the college football playoff, when you go out and hire USC's coach, when you invest in facilities like they have, when you're able to do very well in the transfer portal, revenue sharing is coming. NIL is shifting in terms of what's that going to look like. You need somebody at this school now that is going to build off of all of the stability and all of the successes that Rick Hart did have and take it to the next level. Find new revenue streams. Find new ways to make SMU a school that whenever somebody talks about what are the top schools in athletics, both in how they're run and their success on the field or on the court or whatever, SMU is among those schools. The big money names at SMU see this program and see this university as, I mean, a school that has no limit. And Rick Hart loves SMU, and he loved his situation. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But maybe it is one of those deals where he just wasn't out there enough. He wasn't loud enough. And everybody has their own style of doing things, and everybody has their own personality. And it doesn't make him a bad person or a bad athletic director. He's very, very good. at both of those things. But now is that time where SMU wants a little bit more of a shot in the arm in athletics, and a change of leadership has now come. And so I don't think I really have too much else to say. I'm going to drop another recruiting pod. I don't know if I'm going to get to it today with everything going on, but that was on the list. And then this happened. So we'll have a lot more to talk about. So a shorter episode for you guys on this Friday. But, Rick Hart has a lot to be proud of for what he did for this athletic department. A lot of people had a lot of hands in that, and a lot of credit deserves to be dished out. So the changing of the guard is happening across this university, a lot of different positions, deans of schools, president, of course, and now the athletic director. But I would encourage, there are major things that Rick Hart, I just think, did not meet the standard of what should have been done, or maybe he would have handled things differently if he could have seen it play out ahead of time. But, he was a really strong AD in the sense of SMU was able to navigate an incredible amount of change and an incredible amount of tumultuous situations and emerge from it in the ACC. And if SMU has a joke of an athletic director, or just a really poor athletic director and department in terms of how it's run, I don't think that they get that momentum to ultimately flip into the ACC, literally flipping NC State. So history will look back on Rick Hart as one of the, if not the top athletic director in SMU history, just from all the accomplishments and all the things that have happened at the school. There will always be people that you could knock it down pretty substantially, and there are some key moments where he probably wants back. But overall, he had a really good run. 13 years is a long time. There is new blood that is now on the way, and the search is going to begin here soon. So with that, guys, I don't really have too much to say about it, but I really appreciate Rick. He was always great to me and his whole staff. And so we'll be interested to see kind of how things shake out and kind of what's next with the search committee that's going to be formed by SMU and put in place to find the next athletic director. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see who they come away with, because will you get that wild card? I mean, will you make that big splash? And David Miller and Bill Armstrong and many of the board of trustees, are going to want to do that. And so that's what we're watching for next at SMU, is who's going to be next in charge, and will it be as big of a splash as Jay Hartzell was? So things are changing at SMU, and we'll be here to track it all for you at ontheponyexpress.com. So before we go, I do want to remind you guys that we are presented by StatusJet, statusjet.com. Reach out to David Henry and his team. Talk to David today, of course, as this news came down. And boy, you might want to, if you're SMU and you're trying to keep your moves under wraps, maybe StatusJet is the way to get your new athletic director in the middle of the night by booking him or her a flight on StatusJet. So, but if you're a listener of ontheponyexpress.com, reach out to StatusJet today for a discount on your round trip flight when you mention On the Pony Express or the code PonyUpACC. Great people. They're proud SMU supporters and, of course, supporters of the On the Pony Express podcast. So book your next trip with them today. We appreciate their support of the podcast and of SMU. So with that, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. A little shorter, maybe a little bit of rambling, but hopefully it helps you get you through the rest of your Friday. So appreciate all you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time on another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.